Good Wednesday, everyone. I'm Cyrus Webb, and welcome to Conversation Daily News. Glad you all could be with us. Of course, you have your news headlines coming up on this hump day. I have a message from my book, Word That You Live By, and in today's news you can use. You'll be hearing part of my conversation with Dr. William Crowder and his patient Stephanie, talking about an interesting heart disease that I have never heard of before. It's called HCM. It impacts 1 in 500 Americans. You're going to hear about the symptoms, what you need to know. You don't want to miss that. Enjoy today's broadcast. For Conversation Daily News, I'm Cyrus Webb with your Wednesday headlines. In national news, Biden says Trump sowing doubt about U.S. commitment to NATO is un-American. President Joe Biden on Tuesday said Donald Trump's comments calling into question the U.S. commitment to defend its NATO allies from attack were dangerous and un-American, seizing on the former president's comments that sowed fresh fears among U.S. partners about its dependability on the global stage. Trump, the front-runner in the U.S. for the Republican Party's nomination, said over the weekend that he once warned they would allow Russia to do whatever it wants to NATO member nations that were delinquent in devoting 2% of their gross domestic product to defense. It was the latest instance in which the former president seemed to side with an authoritarian state over America's democratic partners. Speaking from the White House as he encouraged the House to take up a Senate-passed aid bill to fund Ukraine's efforts to hold off a 2-year Russia invasion, Biden said Trump's comments about the Mutual Defense Pact were dangerous and shocking. The whole world heard it, and the worst thing is he means it, Biden added. Biden said that when America gives its word, it means something, and called Trump's comments sowing doubt about its commitments un-American. Biden said of Trump, he doesn't understand that the sacred commitment that we've given works for us as well. NATO's Article 5 Mutual Defense Clause states that an armed attack against one or more of its members should be considered an attack against all members. But Trump has often depicted NATO allies as leeches on the U.S. military and openly questioned the value of the military alliance that has defined American foreign policy for more than 70 years. Since the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Biden has ushered Finland into the alliance and is clearing the way for Sweden to do the same. While Ukraine is not a member of NATO, the alliance has served as a key contributor of the U.S. organized effort to support Kyiv's military defenses in the nearly 2-year-old conflict. NATO allies agreed in 2014 after Russia annexed Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula to halt the spending cuts they had made after the Cold War and move towards spending 2% of their GDP on defense by 2024. The spending target is not a requirement for NATO members. In more national news, more than 1,000 flights already canceled due to storms, says the Associated Press. A nasty storm with 60 miles per hour winds raked parts of the Northeast on Tuesday, creating dangerous conditions on the road and snarling airports. More than 1,200 flights were canceled before noon on Tuesday, mostly along the East Coast, but that is likely to spread west as the week goes on. Airlines can't control the weather, but they are still required to provide refunds for customers whose flights are canceled. Here's what to know about your rights and what to know when cancellations start piling up. The Associated Press says, when airlines expect bad weather to create problems for flights, they often give travelers a chance to reschedule their trip by a few days at no extra fee. It is better to be stuck at home or in a hotel than to be stranded in an airport terminal, so use the airline's app or flight websites to make sure your flight is still on before heading out to the airport. In Mississippi news, the first black woman in the Mississippi legislature now has her portrait in the state capitol. Former Representative Alice Clark was the first black woman elected to the Mississippi legislature, and now she's the first black person and first woman to have a portrait on display in the state capitol. She smiled on Tuesday as fellow lawmakers, friends, and supporters honored her during a ceremony to unveil the oil painting, which has a prominent spot in the room where the House Education Committee meets. Clark, an 84-year-old from Jackson, Mississippi, served 39 years before deciding not to seek re-election in 2023. "Thank God I've had more good days than I've had bad days," she said during a ceremony, "and I'd just like to thank everybody who's here. I'd like to help everybody who's helped me to get here because I did nothing by myself," she said. The artist Ryan Mack said he based the portrait on a photo of Clark from the mid-1980s. "I'm a true believer and witness of the good she has done," Mack said, citing her work on education and nutrition programs. And finally, in business news, U.S. inflation slows but remains elevated, and sign that price pressures are easing only gradually. Consumer inflation in the United States cooled last month, yet remained elevated in the latest sign that the pandemic fuel price surge is only gradually and fitfully coming under control. Tuesday's report from the Labor Department showed that the Consumer Price Index rose 0.3% from December to January, up from 0.2% increase the previous month. Compared with a year ago, prices were up 3.1%. That is less than the 3.4% figure in December and far below the 9.1% inflation in 2022. Cyrus Webb, Conversations Daily News. It's time for a message from my book, Word That Choose to Live By. Enjoy. Good Wednesday, everyone. I'm Cyrus Webb, and welcome to Word That Choose to Live By. When you're in the midst of your fiery times, keep in mind that your challenges are not meant to destroy you, but refine you. Allow the flames to remove the dross and all that is not helpful to the person you were meant to be. If you hold on, what will remain will be a wiser and stronger you that will be better equipped for what will eventually come your way. Just have faith. Have an amazing Wednesday. We are part of my conversation coming up with Dr. William Crowder and his patient Stephanie in today's News You Can Use. Stay with us. You're listening to Conversation Daily News. For Conversation Daily News, I'm Cyrus Webb with your News You Can Use. Since February celebrated as Heart Month, I spoke with Dr. William Crowder and a patient named Stephanie about a heart condition called obstructive HCM and what you need to know about it. Here's a bit of our conversation.
Again, thanks to the two of you for stopping by. I really do appreciate the time.
Thank you very much for having us.
Look, the pleasure is definitely all mine. Dr. Crowder, I want to begin with you. For our audience out there, we hear so much about the heart. They may not be as familiar as I wasn't with HCM. Can you tell them more about it?
Sure, thank you. So as you alluded to, this condition, obstructive HCM, is actually a condition that affects the heart muscle in a way that makes the muscle very thick. Traditionally, we think of heart failure as a weakness of the heart muscle. But in this particular case, the heart muscle gets very thick, particularly inside the left ventricle chamber, and that thick muscle actually obstructs blood from exiting the heart. So that obstruction can cause a backfilling of blood into the lungs and increased pressure there, which can lead to the symptoms that we often hear about with cardiomyopathy, that shortness of breath, that with exertion, the exercise intolerance, the chest symptoms of either pain or pressure, heart racing, palpitations that can lead to passing out spells or, what we call syncope. Those are very common symptoms with the heart, as you alluded to.
Yeah. And Stephanie, we appreciate you stopping by to be able to share a bit of your story. Can you kind of talk to us more about your experience with this condition?
I sure can. Thanks, Cyrus. We're just so excited to be here on behalf of BMS to highlight this disease for Heart Month. My experience was that in my 20s, I was diagnosed with a heart murmur, but nothing else. And that didn't stop me from leading a very active lifestyle. I was a mom of 3 boys. I was a marathon runner. But later in my 40s, I started to have those symptoms.
Cyrus Webb, Conversations Daily News. We thank you all for tuning in to this edition of Conversation Daily News. Be back to get on tomorrow's more news, message from my book, Word That Choose to Live By, and of course, entertainment spotlight. Until then, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversation Daily News today. Let's go make today amazing. Take care.